Hello and welcome to my channel. Try This as a series breaking down a certain game or playstyle of a game. Today we're going to be talking Commander and breaking down Tovolar, Dire Overlord. The video is broken down in the chapters, which you can find in the description or in the timeline. I'll be briefly covering Tovolar, then cover some win conditions and how we'll get there. I'll talk about some mana base and card draw strategies. I'll discuss other synergistic cards in the deck and why I think they'll help. I'll cover some other cards I cut from my example list, why they didn't fit my list but they might fit yours. Finally, I'll move on to some budget suggestions for the deck. If you enjoy this content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps other viewers discover the content I produce and is a great way to show support. With that said, let's dive in. Tovolar is a 3/3 human werewolf that costs 1 red-green with daybound. He has whenever a wolf or werewolf you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Also, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more wolves and or werewolves, it becomes night. Then transform any number of human werewolves you control. His nightbound side has the same draw ability. It has an activated ability that costs X red-green. It reads, target wolf or werewolf you control gets +X/+O and gains trample until end of turn. Werewolves are a very fun and aggressive tribe with a variety of powerful effects. Between all the Innistrad sets, there are many options to fill this deck up with, and most being budget friendly. Tovolar is a solid creature at the head of this tribe as he transforms all of the old werewolves in addition to the new ones that have the daybound-nightbound mechanic. His draw effect is actually amazing in this deck. In almost every game I played, his draw ability carried me. I always had gas in my hand to recover after board wipes or other setbacks. Since werewolves are mostly cheap creatures to cast, rebuilding was very easy in this tribe. There was a weird downside though. Honestly, the double-sided nature of werewolves made them a bit of a pain to play. Normally it isn't a problem with a couple dual-faced cards, but there are 26 in this deck, including Tovolar. I'd recommend having your deck list open while you play this tribe just to remember what all the creatures flip into. It was a strange double-edged sword for this deck, as the dual-sided nature made the deck compelling and engaging to play, but I often stumbled through my turns dragging out the games a bit. Overall though, werewolves were a very fun tribe to run and build around. We're going to be jamming out werewolves onto the field and eventually beat down our opponents with combat damage. With Tovolar giving us so much draw potential in this deck, it's essentially 2 feet on the gas pedal throughout the whole game. We're going to try growing our creatures or amplifying their damage with cards like Fiery Emancipation and Unnatural Growth. There are more ways to buff them we'll talk about later, but these are some of the heavy hitters. It's possible we could win with commander damage. Since Tovolar can buff himself, we could drop a bunch of extra mana into him to threaten a Voltron win. I never ran into a game where I needed to do this, but if you're running fast mana cards or other huge ramp cards, it's worth pointing out. Starting off is the auto-includes in Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, and Thematic Compass. I've always found Thematic Compass to be a reliable card at any point in the game. It can help ensure land drops in early to mid game and then flip into a strictly better Mazavith to protect us from Voltron commanders and other problem creatures. Birds and Ornithoptera Paradise are 2 mana dorks I often include in my list. They're flexible creatures we can get out early on and tap for whatever mana we need. Wayfarer's Bauble and Talisman of Impulse are 2 early game ramp cards. There are generally better options than the Bauble when in green. However, as a 1-drop it's easy to get out, and we can always crack it when we have extra mana to spare later on. The Celestus and Herald's Horn are 2 cards that synergize with our deck. The Celestus taps for whatever we need and can draw us cards. Most werewolves are cheap to cast, but the Herald's Horn gives them a small cost reduction and can give us some card advantage. I'm running some of my usual green ramp spells and Cultivate and Nature's Lore. These cards we can cast in early game, and Nature's Lore can get our dual lands if we want. Like it, Skyshroud Claim and Tempt with Discovery can also get non-basics to field for us. Tempt with Discovery is also a fun card to spark some conversation with your opponents. The new Arlen Planeswalker has a mana ability when it flips. It's probably more useful to use her as a werewolf creature, but I think it's worth mentioning. There are a few werewolves that can act as mana dorks in this deck. Weaver of Blossoms and Cemetery Prowler are both solid cards in this tribe to help out our mana base. Weaver upgrades when it transforms, and the Prowler provides some repetitive graveyard hate to reduce the cost of our spells. Scorned Villager and Kessig Naturalist are 2 more cards that would generate us mana. The Villager upgrades while the Naturalist flips into an Anthem for our tribe while still retaining the mana production ability. Goblin and Archimancer gives us some blanket cost reductions for our deck. There is a pretty aggressive mana base for the deck, so it might not be needed, but as a 2-drop we can reliably get it out early on to help our deck out. To wrap it up is the Grey Henge as the King of Mana Rocks. Honestly, I think this card is way too pushed. Having a rock that does everything we want in Magic with a very easy cost reduction to play into for mono green is crazy. It gains us life, it grows our creatures, it draws us cards in addition to making us mana. As I mentioned before, Tovolar will probably carry most of the card draw in this deck. Playing into the tribe will naturally snowball our card advantage. There are 25 creatures that work with Tovolar's ability, not counting tokens that the deck can make or Arlen as a creature. Just because he'll do so much work doesn't mean we shouldn't run other draw effects. The previously mentioned Greathenge, Guardian Project, and Beast Whisperer will also draw us cards. With 30 creatures including Tovolar, we should get plenty of value from all of these cards. These are the other major players in the deck. The Celestus and Herald's Horn also provides some card advantage, but between these 3 cards and our commander, we should be all set. Tovolar can give some things trample, but I'm running some other cards that help him give our creatures some evasion. Full Moon's Rise, Howlpack Resurgence, and the Flip Breakneck Rider will give our creatures trample. Cards like these will massively help out our primary win condition. Ava Bruck Caretaker will help anthem certain creatures. Its flip side anthems everything while also protecting them. This is easily the most powerful werewolf in the deck as it gives us a massive power swing. Arlen Cord has some useful utility in this deck. She can either give something haste or transform in the process making a creature. Then she can give things trample on following turns. If we eventually get the emblem, then we can leave up blockers and blast our opponents with our creature's abilities instead. There are a few minor anthem effects werewolves have that will eventually add up over time. Mayor of Averbrook, Instigator Gang, and a flipped Child of the Pack all anthem our creatures in some way. Child of the Pack also generates wolf tokens for us, as well as the Mayor when it flips. Using Tovolar's ability, the wolves can also draw us cards. Tovolar's Huntmaster, Silverfur Partisan, and Huntmaster of the Fells will all generate wolf tokens for us. The Partisan is a bit restrictive, but can get us some value if our opponents target our stuff. The Huntmaster is probably the best token generator in the deck when it flips. It also has a great removal effect. 4 mana is a little expensive, but it gives us an opportunity to remove blockers or problem creatures. Howlpack Piper, Duskwatch Recruiter, and Hound Tamer all give a variety of utility. Hound Tamer is yet another way to give our creatures trample. The Piper can cheat out cards or look at the top cards of our library to dig for creatures. Duckwatch Recruiter can do the same or provide us another creature cost reduction. Gaia Reach Bandit's flip form will help us transform our werewolves if it is at nighttime. Also, Immerwolf not only anthem our creatures, but keep them from transforming back into their weaker versions. Outside of Tovolar's ability, the Bandit is the only other way to force our creatures to transform. The Nightbound creatures will come in transformed when it's night, but this helps out the older cards. It's really helpful as Tovolar doesn't force things to transform after he transforms. His upkeep ability only triggers when he's a human. To wrap it up is Rhythm of the Wild to either grow our non-token creatures or give them haste. It also makes them uncounterable, which is always helpful. The cutting room floor is where I talk about some cards around over $10 at the time of recording that I cut from my list for various reasons but are worth mentioning the run. Though these cards didn't find a home in my list, they might find a home in yours. First up is Descendant's Path as a way to possibly cheat out our werewolves onto the battlefield. Since it's an upkeep trigger, we can resolve it before Tovolar to possibly flip another werewolf. With 29 creatures in the 99, there's a good chance we'll hit something eventually. However, without some way to scry creatures to the top, I didn't think it was worth running in the list. Urza's Incubator is another classic tribe reduction card. Werewolves are normally not that expensive, so I didn't think it was really needed, plus I'm running several other cards that can reduce the cost of my creature spells to make up for it. Sword of the Animist and Sword of Hearth and Home are 2 equipment cards I normally run for added ramp. With such a heavy creature base, I think either would be welcome in this deck. I'm running 21 basics, so there are plenty of lands to fetch with these cards. I thought the ramp package was already pretty aggressive in this deck. With all the draws, I was never hurting for land drops, and I didn't think either were needed in this list. I wanted to fit in as many werewolves as I could to always feed the board state, so I cut them in favor of mana-related werewolves. Last up is Commander's Plate as a way to protect Tovolar and possibly set up for a Voltron win. I built a lot of Voltron decks recently, and I didn't feel like playing too much into that win condition. However, it gives Tovolar protection for Esper, which is fantastic. I found him to often get targeted out of the game, so the added protection would be nice. There are quite a few werewolves I didn't cover, and I won't shout them all out, but Village Watch and Realm Walker are some worth mentioning. Village Watch can give our creatures haste as it transforms, which is great as we're playing into such an aggressive deck. Realm Walker lets us cast our werewolves from the top of our library, but again with 29 creatures it could whiff. Nylia, God of the Hunt, is another way to give our creatures trample. I think she's a solid include to upgrade some of our other trample effects. Since she's indestructible, she'll be more reliable and persistently give our creatures some form of evasion. Nightpack Ambusher, Howling Moon, and Howlhenge Overlord are 3 cards that can generate more wolf tokens for us. The Ambusher also gives our creatures another anthem to play into our win condition. Though more creatures are nice and Howlhenge will make our board state explode, be careful not to expand too much. Tovolar's draw effect isn't a May trigger, and with so many creatures we could risk stacking ourselves. We could easily avoid this by just holding these tokens back as blockers, but it's worth mentioning. Speaking of draw effects, Hermit of the Natternolls and Lambhole Elder are 2 more werewolves that can provide card draw. I felt like I had enough in this deck, but if you're struggling, these are 2 more budget options for you to fit the tribe and theme of the deck. I didn't cover every card in the deck or every suggestion I have for Tovolar, so if you'd like to see the rest, check out the link in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider clicking the like button and subscribing to the channel. Comment below on cards you think synergize well with this commander, and if you have any suggestions for commanders to build in the future. Thank you so much for watching, good luck, and have fun.